It's Monday night.
I've been in the game a long time. When the catcher catches the ball and it's strike three, you call the guy out. It's that simple, isn't it?
And if it's Monday, it's the knee jerks.
I'm not going to sit here and rip umpires. But you saw what you saw, clearly saw what you saw. I just saw it for the 10th time. Write it and say something once in a while. Have the nerve to say something. Detroit sports talk with attitude.
Attitude on three. 1, 2, 3. Attitude.
Coming up tonight, will Big Al guess whose birthday it is? Who are the jerks of the week? What will Eno rant about now? The answers coming up next. Two guys who know Detroit sports. The voice of reason, Greg Eno and Big Al Beaton.
It's August 25th, 2019. It's creeping towards Labor Day, but that still means it's time for the Knee Jerks, Detroit Sports Talk of Eno and Big Al. I'm the Big Al of the equation, longtime Detroit-based podcaster and blogger Al Beaton. Joining me, as always, is a man who just spent some time on the Sunrise side of the state, and I'm sure he has all kinds of stories to tell us. He's your man about town, also known for his writing at Out of Bounds and the Winged Wheeler. That would be Greg Eno. Greg, what's up?
Hey, Al. Yeah, it was a good time up there in the Thumb area. We enjoyed it. I just want to let you know that I am the chosen one. And
I'll keep that in mind. That may be your new nickname, the chosen one.
Or you could also call real, whatever one you want to do.
Don't call you late for dinner either. So
right,
yeah.
That's true. So anyway, I am really happy to be back home and to be with you here on the Knee Jerks. We're recording here on August 25th. I am Greg Eno from my Out of Bounds WordPress blog. Follow me on Twitter at Greg Eno. Follow the Knee Twitter at the Knee Jerks, and check out my Red Wings blog, which is kind of dormant in the summertime because it's off season. But that's the Winged Wheeler, at also hosted by WordPress. And I want to give a shout out, Al, to and I forgot to mention this when we were together on the 11th. I did Adam Hernandez's show, The Majors. It's called Detroit Uncut. They do a podcast. And from the Majors, you probably have heard of it. The Majors is a sports network, and they have a Detroit version. And Adam Hernandez is he runs it with Dorf, the Detroit version. So they had me on a couple weeks ago talking about the article I wrote about Ron Gardenhire and the rebuild. I just want to give a shout out and thanks to Adam for hosting me. We talked for about 45 minutes. It was a good conversation. So I appreciate those guys for having me on. So I shared that link on my Facebook page and on my Twitter. So hopefully folks got a chance to listen to that discussion. It was a lot of fun. Al and I are going to be pontificating here for the next hour and a half. A lot of for August, there's a lot to talk about tonight.
Surprisingly, yes.
Usually August is kind of a slow month sometimes, and you're kind of in between, especially if your baseball team's not in a pennant race. Football hasn't really started yet, and hockey hasn't started, and basketball hasn't started. So we've got surprisingly a lot of stuff to talk about, and we're going to get into that in a second. But before we get into any of that, we're going to play a game we like to call Whose Birthday Is It, Maestro?
We baked you a birthday cake. If you get it to me, and you moan and groan and woe, don't forget we told you so. Happy birthday! Happy birthday!
Everybody knows how we play this game by now. I give Al a clue or two or three of an individual whose birthday it is today in the world of sports. And if Al can correctly guess that person within the first two clues, he'll receive a year's supply of Pearl Drops toothpaste.
Yes, it didn't come in a tube. It came in a little squeeze bottle thing, if I remember right. Kind of like a giant eyeglass. A giant nasal spray bottle. Old. We are so old. It's not even.
Oh, I know. This is funny. And people might think, how does Eno spend all week thinking about these things? And I know
Probably.
I don't. No, I sometimes we start the show. I don't even know what I'm going to say until I blurt it out. So these things sometimes just come to me. But anyway, Al, this person made his name in the world of football. I will tell you this. I will also. This is kind of tricky because he played in Detroit, so this is kind of. I'm going to try not to give too many clues here, but he was born on this date in 1953, so he's 66 years old today. Like I say, he in football he played only in Detroit. I will say that makes it maybe even easier. I don't know. I will tell you. I'm not going to tell you what position he played, but I will tell you he was on the defensive side of the football, and I will tell you that he was really one of the finest at his craft for a very short period of time. Made a couple of Pro Bowl, 4 times he made the Pro Bowl actually, and I'll leave it there.
And what was his birth? When did you say he was born? What year?
53.
53. So it would put him with the Lions in the early mid 70s, at least to start. Defensive player, made a few Pro Bowls. That's I gotta think here for. Damn. You know, because the Lions had some pretty darn good players there in that era, especially on defense. They never had a quarterback thing. You know, as we've talked about endlessly on here. Oh God! You know, I'm just going to have to think about that a little bit because there's a couple names that are kind of floating around, but they're not coming. But I'm not sure the time frame. I'm just going to throw one out there. Mike Lucci.
No, Lucci was way before that.
Yeah, that's what I thought, that's what I meant. See, if you know, there was names thrown around in there, but they kind of blend in that mid '60s to mid '70s era, if you know what I'm saying.
Right.
Yeah, so there's a couple others I'm still floating around out there. I'm thinking of. So we'll just wait for question 2. I'm sure I need to make space in my cabinet for my pearl drops. So. But anyway, all right, we had a few topics to talk about. Actually, what kind of shook up our show notes were obviously the Andrew Luck news that broke late last night. Actually, I was watching the Week 0, God, I hate that term, college football game was at Miami and Florida last night when it came across on the crawl at the bottom of the screen that Luck retired. And that was a bit of a jaw dropper. But we'll go into our thoughts on. We've talked about some of this in the past, specifically when it came to Calvin Johnson, but we'll also get into how this tangentially involves the Lions and how the Colts handled this compared to how the Lions handle this. Also, we'll talk a little bit about the Lions' exhibition season. Trust me, I'm not going to call it preseason, where the Lions lost two more starters to injury. Thank goodness the news broke over the last couple of days that they're not season enders or more. Miss a month or two. We'll talk about that. What's going on with them? Because other teams have lost players for the season. Like the Texans just lost their starting running back to an ACL in exhibition season.
And the Jets lost one of their linebackers, one of their good linebackers.
Exactly. And Cam Newton hurt his foot, had to leave again. We'll talk about that. We'll touch on the Tigers. The Tigers must have heard my rant 2 weeks ago about if you're going to lose, bring up the prospects. Well, they've started to bring up the prospects. And the team they're still losing, but they're more interesting and more entertaining to watch, which is all that really matters at this point. And also, the big news with the Tigers, Greg, was, of course, the Justin Verlander versus the Free Press. So we'll talk all about, essentially, we'll talk about what was right and what was wrong about this whole thing. And trust me, there's a lot wrong with what went down with that. If we got time, we'll talk a little bit about Andre Drummond confirming he's going to decline his player option. He's going to be a free agent. So we'll have to decide for the Pistons if he's worth $30 million a year. So with that, though, let's touch on Andrew Luck. We'll start with that because one is his retirement kind of hits close to home because Lions fans have gone through that with Barry Sanders and Calvin Johnson with a player. He's more so in his prime, especially being a quarterback. He was only 29 years old who decided to retire. But, no, obviously there was not a lot of signs that Barry Sanders and Calvin Johnson were slowing down either. But then those retirements came out of the blue. Kind of some of the difference with this one, though, there's only 2 weeks ago before the season starts and Luck announced his retirement, even though he hasn't been able to play this exhibition season due to battling more injuries. In this case, it was a calf ankle type thing that was giving him all kinds of misery. But his explanation, and it makes a lot of sense, is that he was worn down physically and mentally, Greg, due to a series of injuries for really the past 4 or 5 years. We're talking about, probably a top 5 quarterback definitely top 10 quarterback, a guy who makes the Colts a definite dark horse Super Bowl contender, definitely a playoff team. But over the last several years, he's been battling injury after injury, and some of them pretty damn severe, such as a lacerated kidney, for Christ's sake. But this announcement, Greg, really blindsided, I think. I don't know about the Colts brass, but it blindsided the NFL as a whole, blindsided the fan base. I think it blindsided a lot of people in the media when it broke around, 9, 10 o'clock last night, as we're recording this on Sunday the 25th. Other things that came with this is the Colts fans, I guess like any fan base, seem to be irrationally angry. As news leaked during the game, and everybody had their cell phones, and as this news came out, I believe it was, I forgot the talking head that broke the news, Schefter out of ESPN, as he tweeted all this and started to go around the stadium. Fans started booing. Fans were calling out Luck, essentially being irrationally angry. And obviously, if you read about Luck, the Indy fan base online, it's really split between people who I think understand what he's going through and people who are just like piss on him. He quit, blah blah blah. So there's that going on, and there's also that Greg, Indianapolis. Today, it was announced that the Colts will not force Luck to repay any portion of his signing bonus, prorated or whatever. Luck retired with 2 years left on his contract. The Colts could have recouped $12.8 million in a signing bonus and another $12 million in roster bonuses that was paid earlier this year. They essentially just writing it off. That is stark contrast, Greg, to how the Lions handled the Sanders and Johnson situation by forcing them to repay portions of their bonuses and essentially alienating them both from the franchise. Sanders has reconciled with the Lions for the most part. Calvin Johnson right now, it's a very bitter divorce right now, and we've talked about it. How Johnson has said, I'm not right. They need to write me a check, blah blah blah. But I guess starting with Luck though, Greg. As someone who, as you know, lived in chronic pain for over probably a good 15 years until I got my medical issues sorted out, being in pain every day and having to deal with it one way or another really takes a toll on you physically and mentally. It is exhausting. And as Andrew Luck said in his press conference, he's just absolutely drained having to go through the gets injured, go through rehab, has to then prepare to play again, plays, get injured, goes through rehab, and it just actually has drained him of his love of the sport. And at 29 years old, he's had a lifetime worth of injuries, and even in a press conference he says, I'm in pain right now, I'm dealing with pain. So I think that alone tells you volumes about why he quit. He's sick and tired of being sick and tired. And when you don't feel, when you're in pain, when you don't feel good, and especially when you in a career like his where he is depending on his body, I can see why he just decided this isn't worth it anymore. It helps that he's made, probably over $100 million in his career, and he can do this at 29. But most quarterbacks, elite quarterbacks, play well into their 30s, and this is one who's not even 30 saying, it's just not worth it to me anymore. And I say more power to him, rather than trying to hang on, keep the Colts in limbo about his health, and continue to collect money he didn't feel like he was earning. So when it comes down to his health, I think that's really what it all comes down to. And I am 100% with Luck. It's when you're dealing with pain, there is nothing, nothing more draining on you mentally.
Well, and I wrote about this on Out of Bounds today, that I wouldn't be surprised if more star athletes, Al, in this sport do this. Yeah. You could talk about the timing all you want. That's fine. I understand the Colts fans being frustrated, but I don't think they should have. The whole booing thing. It gets disingenuous after a while to trash fans for booing inappropriately. I mean, sometimes the boos are just frustration. It's maybe they don't like the news.
Yeah, maybe not so much that, but when they start going at him personally online, or you see some of the ridiculous hot takes from the hot take artists out there.
No, that's different. That's different. Yeah. That's totally different.
Yeah.
But yes, the pain thing. He's had a great year last year.
Comeback player of the year.
Missed the 2017 season entirely. Had a great year last year. Led them into the second round of the playoffs. But this is a guy who can afford to do this. Now, there's a lot of players in the NFL, that cannot afford, frankly. When I say can't afford it, I mean they don't make the kind of money
they're not set for life. In other words, yeah.
And so they have no. I remember Bud Grant one time said that he says, I'm not sure that there aren't players that are playing pro football that don't like football, but they play because they can't afford not to. Yeah. Well, there's some players that just wouldn't be able to do what Andrew Luck is doing. He's fortunate enough. He's made a lot of money already. He can decide his fate, if you will. If he doesn't want to put himself through the rigors anymore, if he doesn't want to risk, and these are injuries that are not even related to concussions or not even related to the head.
Exactly.
These are all, for the most part,
bones and ligaments and the like.
Yeah, right. And so, but still painful, obviously. And he said, "Look, I'm spending too much time rehabbing and not enough time, thinking about game planning and doing what I really love, which is football." He says, taking the love of the game away from it. And he says, this is a sport that if you're not all in, essentially, if you're not all in, you shouldn't play it. He says, I wouldn't want to shortchange my teammates. I wouldn't want to shortchange the fans of the Colts, and I don't want to shortchange, ownership. So, I applaud him. And I would applaud him if it was Matt Stafford, frankly. I mean, this is that's why you and I have talked about this, about players making their money. I've never begrudged an NFL player making the salary that they make. I say make as much money as you can while you can, because it's a very short window of opportunity, and the league is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and these players are essentially entertaining us, so that a lot of other people can make a lot of money every week in gambling and fantasy football and so forth. So, make as much money as you can. So, the point of my column today was that I would not be surprised if we start to see more star players retire at this age. It is kind of unusual though, Al, that it is a quarterback. You would expect this maybe from another skill position, maybe a running back, maybe a wide receiver, maybe somebody who's taking more hits, or who's or having to do a lot of cutting and moving with his body and his legs. But regardless, Andrew Luck has had a lot of you chronicled some of it, a lot of injury problems, and I don't know how you could find fault with him. And I know you can find fault with the timing. Yeah. He's getting a lot of heat about the timing. Why wait? It's funny because Barry Sanders got a lot of heat for his timing, and that was before training camp. This is just 2 weeks before the season. So, well, you know what? Who knows? Maybe he didn't go into training camp with this.
Yeah, exactly. Things change.
And then, right. And then he decided that, look, I can't, so it's not good for the league. The league needs more Andrew Lucks for sure, but it's symptomatic of the way this game is. It's a very violent, very, very physical game, and I wouldn't be surprised if the league starts to see other star players not hang around as long as they used to.
Yeah, I know we touched on this in the past that. Especially some of these guys, especially once they get that one big contract after their rookie contract, whether they cash it in free agency or they sign extensions, things like that. At that point, when they get that contract, they're in their mid-20s. Now they get that 4 or 5 year long-term big money deal. They're pushing 30, and they've been in the league 7, 8, 9 years. And if they have to start thinking about their own mortality. At this point, a lot of them have families. Either they're just starting families, and if they have taken care of their money correctly, they are in pretty darn good shape. And And a lot of these guys are now enlightened as to how much damage they are doing to themselves by playing such a brutal game. And I agree with you. Yeah, we're going to see more guys like this. You know, like another guy who I think people have forgotten about, who decided to get out just because of the brutality game. Jake Plummer, the old quarterback of the Cardinals and the Broncos. I think he was around 30 years old, and he said, "I had enough. I'm done with this. I've made my money. I don't want to beat myself up anymore. I'm going to go sit by a lake," and that's exactly what he did. Barry Sanders, how you talked about how Bud Grandin said some guys don't play for the love of the game. Barry Sanders, I think, was one of those guys. Barry Sanders played football because it just happened to be something he was one of the best in the world at, but you never got the impression he loved the game. And once he got his fill of it, of the game itself, what it was starting to do to his body, and the fact that he was playing for such a shit organization, he walked away with absolutely no regrets. And I think we're going to see, you're right, I agree with you, we're going to see more and more of this, of guys walking away from the league with absolutely no regrets, and a lot of it has to do with the money involved. Because if we're going back to Bud Grant's here, as you brought him up, big money back then was like $50,000 a year. The kind of salary, you get the kind of salary you could make selling cars or being a sales rep or something like that. So I can see why guys hung around as long as they could back then because of the money. Where else were they going to make that much money for what for essentially what they were doing? Nowadays, these guys, it's a full-time job for these guys, 365 days a year to stay in shape, to stay prepared to play football. And they're being paid accordingly. So if they can make a lifetime's worth of wages and be set to walk away from their game in their late 20s, early 30s, more power to them. And the other thing that gets me, they don't owe anybody anything. They have you owe the fans. You owe the fans jack. When it comes down to it, what have the fans really? Fans are fans. And they really don't affect what's going on with the team or the game or the players or anything like that. Fans are often this little, their own little bubble, percolating and basing their lives off a game for whatever reason. And these players, this is a living, this is a job. And when a job becomes too much for you, be it mentally, physically, you need to move on. You move on. You don't know when. As long as you do everything you're supposed to do, which is what he has done. He doesn't owe anybody anything. So the ones that really get me, Greg, the fans, is say, he owes the fans, he owes us, he quit. As if they wouldn't do the same thing. Put yourself in his shoes. And the problem is, people can't do that.
Exactly. And, people also underestimate, I think, Al, the mental... It's a physical grind, clearly,
yeah.
But there's a mental grind to getting yourself ready to put yourself through 21 weeks, essentially, of if you want to count the preseason and so forth, 21 weeks of you wake up Monday morning, you can't get out of bed, and there's a mental aspect, getting through the season.
Yeah.
Never knowing real, and I don't know if this is top of mind, but and it's certainly in the back of your mind, you don't know if the next game you play is your last.
Right.
You don't know if the next snap is your last snap. You don't know that. You have no idea. It's a crazy way to make a living, but you can make a lot of money doing it, albeit in a very short period of time. But yeah, I mean, these are very personal decisions. I remember Mike Reed, who was a great defensive tackle for the Bengals, retired very early. He wanted to pursue a career in music. Mm-hmm. He had no regrets.
He was a defensive lineman, if I remember right.
Defensive lineman for the Bengals. He was great. He was an All-Pro. He
walked away.
And he walked away in the prime of his career, and he had absolutely no regrets. There's something too, Al, is when these players walk away. You mentioned Sanders. You mentioned Calvin Johnson. We talked, Jimmy Brown, Reed, and now Luck, and there's been a whole bunch of them. They never come back. Everybody tries to hold out hope. Well, maybe they'll change. I already saw one person. Well, maybe he'll change. Maybe Luck will change his mind. He's not going to change his mind. Once these guys make their decisions, they're totally at peace. They're totally. It's like a weight lifted off their shoulders, and they have there's no inkling to come. They don't want to come back. They have absolutely no desire to come back. Nobody's gonna talk them into coming back. Now, the one thing that they do miss, it's not that they don't miss it. I mean, they miss the camaraderie. They miss their teammates. They miss, that whole thing, that bunker mentality. They miss that, but not enough for them to really want to come back and put themselves through the rigors. So Luck's not coming back. He'll probably go into television. He's got all the makeup to be a good TV guy. I don't know what he's going to do. I don't know. He's a Stanford grad. He's very smart.
With architectural engineering degree.
So he'll be fine. Dummy. No, he'll be fine, and whatever he chooses to do, he'll be fine. But will he miss it at times? Of course he will. He will. But that doesn't mean that he's not at peace with the decision.
Yeah. And this was as much as since it did happen 2 weeks before the start of the season, people probably he must have jumped to this decision or it was a snap judgment. This had to be something that's been going through his head for the past several years, and I wouldn't be surprised, as you said earlier. And he came into the season, I'm ready. I'm going to play. I want to play. I'm going to go all in. And then he got in the training camp and realized I can't, But considering a lot of people thought his career might have been over a couple of years ago because he missed the entire 2017 season with some sort of mysterious elbow. I mean, it was a shoulder injury, and it was from all accounts it was not handled very well by the previous Colts regime, which I'm sure might have played into Luck leaving the game as it is because he got to see the bad side about how these guys are often treated when it comes to injuries, and the doctors on the team doctor, their first job is to the team, not to the player, and that job is to keep these guys on the field. So Luck is, I bet you if he had. I'm just saying, no, he didn't leap at this. He didn't decide this morning, I'm going to retire. I'm sure this is something that has been in the back of his mind for a very, very long time. And even, I bet you, dollars to donuts, he was going to play this whole year and then call it a career. Maybe make it to the end of his contract, play 2 more years, and then walk. But, only he knows if the time is right. Now, obviously, he felt that way. And one other thing I would add is that when you're dealing with pain, when you're dealing with injury, it doesn't just affect you. It affects everybody around you. It affects your family. It affects your kids. And you have to believe that played into his decision as well, because I would not be surprised as when Luck was dealing with his injury after injury after injury, he was not a fun person to be around, because when you hurt, you sometimes lash out at other people in your life. And I'm sure probably the happiest people in Andrew Luck's life right now that he's no longer a football player is probably his wife and kids, because they're getting a husband and they're getting a father. They're getting Andrew back. They're not getting the Colts quarterback back, and those are two completely different things.
Well, hey, who would have been shocked? Well, maybe some people would have been shocked, but who could have? Maybe I'll rephrase the question. Who could have blamed Matthew Stafford if he would have said, "You know what, guys? Watching my wife go through what she went through in the off season has kind of made me reprioritize my life
and back."
Right, and made me reprioritize my life. I've got these young kids. I've got my wife who's gone through a potentially life-threatening situation.
Yeah.
Who would have blamed him? Well, I mean, I'm sure there people would have, but I mean, who could have? Could have blamed him if he would have said, "You know what? I just football. Football's not the most important thing to me anymore."
Yeah.
And another guy who would have been able to afford to retire
easily.
Early,
yeah.
He would have said, this is not. I can't focus. I can't. It's not as important to me as it used to be. Who knows? I mean, that's something that I was thinking about that as you were talking about Luck's family. I thought, well, what Matthew Stafford? He could. This is a guy who could have said, my wife's or sat out a year and said, look, I got to tend to my wife. The old Chris Spielman thing. When Spielman's wife went through that, cancer, and I'm not sure if he retired for a while, but he took when he was with I think he was with the Bills.
He was with the Bills at that point.
When he stepped back, I'm not sure if he retired or if he just stepped back for a while to help her through that. Of course, it ended up bad. And then did he play?
I don't think he ever came back. I think it might have been his intention to come back, but he never did. I don't think he even really had an official retirement.
Okay.
He just never came back to the game, and obviously he found his niche in another calling, much like Andrew Luck probably will as well.
Right.
One thing we do have to talk about is how the Colts are handling this, and I got to give them all the credit in the world for doing the opposite of the Lions. Essentially, it was their contractual right to go for a significant amount of money, to get a significant amount of money back from Luck in signing and roster bonuses. And they just came to an agreement with Luck that they aren't going after it. You know, those bonuses are Luck's; they're his to keep, and that's that. And essentially, doing the complete opposite of what the Lions did with Sanders and Johnson, where it never got to the lawsuit point, but it became. The lawyers got involved. It got to the point where both Sanders and Johnson had to write checks to the Lions to give back some of that roster bonus money and signing bonus money. I know Sanders, it was more than Johnson, but when you're talking 7 figures, that's a significant amount of money. That would make anybody gag, especially a damn football player. And it's one of those things where I'm not a fan of Jim Irsay, the owner of the Colts. I mean, he's been known to be quite a big a douchebag, in other words. But in this case, the Colts, I think, are doing the right thing. And there's a couple of reasons I think behind this. One, Luck is an all-timer with them. He's one of the best, the best quarterbacks in history, and they've had some pretty darn good ones. But this keeps him in the fold, so to speak. And it also, as God forbid he decides to come back, no bridges are being burned between the two parties. Say he does want to come back in a year or two, and the option would still be there because there's no acrimony between the two parties. And if you ask me, I just think it's the right thing to do because these guys put their life, they put their bodies on the line every damn week. And the fact that there is so little guaranteed money in football today, I just find it absolutely ridiculous. And as you said, I want these guys to keep as much money as they can dealing with these billionaire guys. And so I say great on both parties that they came to an agreement how this was going to happen. And I did read something to the fact that in the end this might have the other option would have been Luck goes on injured reserve. He collects his $12 million a year salary and doesn't do anything and then retires anyway. So I think this, in a way, was a way for both parties to actually come out looking okay, especially the Colts, because as we've seen with the Lions, it divides the fan base and oftentimes it makes the team itself look bad because, I've always thought the Lions should take the George Costanza-type philosophy to doing business. What would we normally do? Then do the opposite. And obviously this is the Colts doing the opposite as the Lions. So that makes a hell of a lot of sense.
Yeah, because, we talked about this a while back with the Lions, and what that situation created was this, neither side was likable.
Yeah.
Neither side was likable. I remember saying, why should I care about a millionaire and a billion, well, not a billion, but a tens of $1 million corporation going at it, fighting over money? Why should I care about that?
Right.
By the Colts not pursuing this the way the Lions did, now, like you said, now they both come out smelling like roses, and you're not forced to take sides, but it doesn't create a scenario because nobody's going to yell at the Colts for not asking for the money back, and nobody's going to. I mean, so yeah, you're right. No bridges were burned. There's no weirdness now. You don't have I wouldn't call Luck a future Hall of Famer because he didn't play long enough. But you don't have a star player in your franchise history. They may retire his. I don't know what they do in Baltimore or in Indianapolis if they have rings of honor or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, they may
whatever their honor is. Yeah,
they may choose to go that route. So you don't have any weirdness about whether he'll show up or whether he'll tell the Colts to stick it. That's not an issue now. So you're right. I agree with you. The other thing I like too was how Luck was initially going to announce it today as we record this on Sunday, but the news, like you said, leaked from Schefter last night, Saturday night during the Bears game. So Luck just squashed the Sunday plans and just had an impromptu press conference Saturday after the game and just spilled the beans, and I give him credit for that too.
And a very emotional one at that. He was hurt by the reaction.
He figured, why should I go through this? Why should I, go to bed tonight not having? It's out there now. I may as well just have this press conference. The whole thing was just for as surprising as it was handled as best as you could, like you said, on all sides. And the loser, of course, is obviously the Colts, but is the NFL because Luck was he was a star player, and but that's there'll be other star players to come take his place.
Yeah, and this is one franchise that's been damn lucky to go from Peyton Manning to Andrew Luck.
Right.
They just happened to get the #1 draft pick in years where they were. Franchise, no-brainer franchise quarterbacks available.
Right.
So, in the end, I say, Luck did what he had to do. I have no problem with what he did. I think the Colts handled this very, very well, which is surprising to say. And right now, the people who come out looking bad in this are the people who badmouthed Luck's decision, who don't know him personally, who only see him as a fan, or some of the hot take media types like the Doug Gottliebs of the world, who spew out quitter or didn't live up to his obligations bullshit when they don't know anything that's going on behind the scenes. So the only people that come out looking bad, at least in my mind, are those types of people who essentially care about the laundry these guys wear.
They take it way too seriously. They have this agenda that has this mentality that the players are like cattle, and
they're the type to say "we" when we're talking about a team,
right? And then you got the fantasy football people who are upset. So what?
Yeah.
So what? Really? Is that? Come on now. So again, it's. The timing wasn't great. Certainly,
it never is. It really never is.
But he said, "Look, I can't play this game at anything less than full throttle. And if I can't play less than full throttle, then I don't want to play. I don't want to shortchange the fans, and I don't want to shortchange the Colt franchise, and I don't want to shortchange my teammates. How can you not respect that?" Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, it's and to his credit, and I think the one thing that bothered thinking back on Barry Sanders, the only thing, he didn't handle it correctly. There's nothing wrong with retiring. There's another thing altogether when you fax in your retirement papers and then flee to Europe, rather than facing the music and to say, I'm quitting the game and giving you reasons and then walking away. I bet you asked Barry Sanders that today, he'd say the same thing. He did not handle it very well at all.
Yeah. Right. Well, he said he was young and foolish, and I don't know about that, but he could have handled it better. There's no question about it.
Yes, exactly. So, we'll continue to see fallout from this story for a while, and I think from here on, because I think the NFL is going to be looking at a new normal, where once guys get into their late 20s, these teams are going to have to start thinking about, rather than signing them to their next contract, finding that guy's replacement. Because I think more and more you're going to see the Tom Brady's of the world, where he wants to play till he's 45 or longer.
Right.
It's all well and good, but talk about a complete outlier. That's not going to happen much anymore. So But no, we'll see what happens. But it was a fascinating story, and there's so many facets to it. It's definitely something we're going to have to keep an eye on as to what happens to the NFL in general, because you got to believe that the owners and front offices got to be worried sick that there's going to be more players following Luck's lead, and the money at stake is very understandable.
Well, they're already scared to death about playing these exhibition games. I mean,
which is what we're going to get into right now, as a matter of fact, because the Lions lost 2 starters to injury in their 24-20 exhibition loss to the Buffalo Bills. Lions center Frank Ragnow and linebacker Jared Davis, middle linebacker, essentially the signal callers for the offensive line and the defense, both were carted off of injury early in the first quarter of that game, and both at the time appeared to be possibly serious leg injuries. Davis was in tears. Neither one of them was able to put weight on their legs. Both rode the cart. And when you see the cart come out, that's immediately, oh shit, this is not good.
Right.
Because as we saw in the first exhibition game, cart comes out, here comes the air cast, that kind of thing. But
yeah,
it looks like they have both have dodged a bullet, so to speak. It came out this weekend that neither injury is season-ending. Ragnow's is I believe they just called it more of a minor ankle sprain. Davis's is more serious in that it's the dreaded high ankle sprain. But neither one of these are going to end their seasons. Both are expected to come back. I would bet. I would be a betting man that Ragnow will be starting opening day. But I would not be surprised if we don't see Jared Davis till maybe after the bye week, which is early this year, like week 5. So we'll see him probably a couple months into the season. But again, this is exhibition play, game that doesn't mean a damn thing. And Matt Patricia played almost all his starters. And every time I saw Matt Stafford, dodging tacklers, running for his life a few times, getting knocked over, it kind of it's always in the back of your head, thinking, oh God, he's going to get hurt, always going to get hurt. And as we talked about on the last podcast, these games have become so unnecessary. That, and then as we talked about before we started recording, it wasn't just the Lions that went through this and dealing with the injuries. Carolina Panthers quarterback Cam Newton had to leave the game because of injury. Washington's tight end, who has a history of concussions, suffered another concussion in his game and is now in a concussion protocol, maybe out for a significant amount of time. The Texans starting running back tore his ACL. He's out for the season. There's a few other players out there who suffered injuries to varying degrees that have really significantly affected the plans for these team seasons. And it just means more and more, Greg, that how this joint practice where we can control everything makes so much more sense than exhibition games at this point. And just, and we got an exhibition game coming up. I believe most of them are going to be played Thursday because it'll be cuts on Saturday. And not a single player of import is going to play in any of the games in the NFL who are going to have any kind of significant role in the regular season. It's going to be a bunch of guys who play this Thursday who are all going to get cut or at the very best end up on the practice squad. So I didn't even know why we even play these exhibition games anymore. As I got my TV's right next to me here, and there's an exhibition game on television right now that probably no one's watching. So why are we playing these damn games, Greg? Why? Because they can't be making that much money at them because there's no crowds there.
Well, you know what?
Other than TV, I know. Well,
there's that, and there is still revenue that comes from these games, and the owners are not going to, they're not going to willingly, very, very easily give up that revenue.
Talking billionaires here, Greg. I can't believe these guys and women are so. There can't be that much revenue at stake that they need to play 4 exhibition games. Are they that greedy? And I guess the answer you're going to say is yes.
Well, yes, that's true. They are, but that's what's funny about it, though, Al. We talk greedy or whatever, but it's like they're cutting off their nose to spite their face because these are their assets.
Yeah.
If we're talking about money, it's a very short. It really, when you think about it, it's a very short-sighted view because if you're going to think about, okay, I'm putting my most precious assets, which are my players, in harm's way by virtue of these exhibition games, yet I'm not willing to give up those two, because they've been talking about limiting the season to 2 games. And they're not willing, at least what we've heard, they're not willing to easily give up those 2 games worth of revenue, which is funny to me because the idea of shortening the exhibition season is to protect the assets, which are the players.
Right.
And those are the guys that are making you all the money. So that is odd to me that the revenue from the exhibition games seemingly is being put in front of the health and well-being of the assets. Now, having said that, Bob Page and I went back and forth on this via email. Bob's take is that the exhibition season should remain. He agrees that he has no problem with players sitting out the games or coaches sitting their players out, but he doesn't think that the season should be reduced. And I said, well, he says, well, because his reasoning was, how else are you going to find out how else are you going to tell who should make the team or not? And I said, look, first of all, I'm not suggesting get rid of all 4 games. I'm suggesting get rid of 2, number one. Number two, these coaches are paid a lot of money as well to make these decisions. I mean, there's nobody who's a coach in the NFL who's a pauper, who's making pauper's wages, okay? Yeah. So they're paid a lot of money to make these decisions. Who should I cut? Who should I not cut? Who should I put on the practice squad? That's their job. If they can't make those decisions based on controlled practices, based on scrimmages with other teams, based on the 2 exhibition games, based on just regular good old-fashioned training camp, if they can't make those decisions, and a lot of the coaches, Al, are the ones that are saying, let's reduce it to 2 games. Yeah. So
I'll just add this. Every other level they can do that, where they don't have to have 4 exhibition games to determine their, what they're, they don't do it in college, they don't do it in high school.
Right. Yeah. That was another thing I said. They don't. Pro football is the only, type of organized football that does that. Yeah. So, but and please don't even. We talk about this. I'm not gonna beat this dead horse. But please don't even think about going to an 18-game regular season. We've already talked about that. I won't. It's the last I'll say about that.
Right. But as far I'm with you there too.
But as far as the exhibition season goes, I don't know what the answer is, Al, other than limiting going down to 2 games, and even then, I don't know if teams are going to play their starters that much. Maybe a little bit to kind of shake off some rust. Yeah. But it just the game is different. It's different than it was back in the days when they played 6 games and
they played themselves into shape.
Right, and the starters played a lot of those games. Believe it or not, but it's changed. The game has changed. It's just totally changed. It's just the equipment, and I wrote this in the Andrew Luck piece. The equipment has not been able to keep up with the ferocity of the league. It just hasn't been able to do it. And so these players are bigger than ever before. They're faster than ever before. They're stronger than ever before.
Hell, they're smarter than ever before.
Something has to give, and it's their bodies and sometimes their minds when you're talking about concussions. So I don't know. It drives me.
I would just add this: if they're so worried about extra revenue, extend the season with an extra bye week. Keep the 16 games, extend the season with a bye week, and then extend the add another layer of playoffs or something. Add 2 more playoff teams, give them more TV money. There's ways around this other than having to play 4 exhibition games and worry about losing that kind of revenue. So, I think we're both in total agreement there. The whole damn exhibition season needs to be blown up. Something new needs to happen with this. And they're headed in that direction with the joint scrimmage type stuff. The problem is there are so many old school people in the game of football, in front offices and ownership and, in media and stuff were, well, that's how we did it in our day, So things change, as you said. So, and things need to change because, 17, the Lions were like this damn close to having their entire season ruined. Much like, remember in 1979 when they lost both Gary Danielson and Joe Reed?
Of course.
Their two quarterbacks at an exhibition game, and that gave them Jeff Comlo as their starter for the entire season. You can say, well, it ended up working out because it gave them the chance to draft Billy Sims, but they should have never been in that point to begin with. When I just remember that like it was yesterday, seeing both those guys go down in an exhibition game, and you knew right then and there, season was over, and the season hadn't even begun. And that's how close the Lions were this time to possibly having their season squashed before it even got started. So yeah, they got to do something, and all this comes down to we're talking about luck and CBA and guaranteed money and paying back money and exhibition games. This is all going to this all better be solved, Greg, when the new CBA comes up in the next year or so. And I sure as hell will be on the players' side. If they got to strike, they got to strike. If they get locked out, so be it. But these guys got to do something to fix these things we're talking about. And the only way it's going to happen if these guys actually manage to stick together, like they never have in the past. They need to stick together like Major League Baseball players do as a joint faction, locked in arm, all guys believing what they need to do. And if they got to strike and maybe lose a year, I know it'll be tough, but that's what they got to do because something's got to happen with pro football because it's unsustainable right now, the way things are going, if you ask me.
It is, and something, I don't know if there'll be a tipping point, an actual event that'll tip this, but I think there's a little bit of momentum, Al, that it's been kind of building about this over the last several years, and I think we're trending toward some discussions about this whole thing.
Yeah, we're not talking football Armageddon. We're talking football. God, I don't think we're good at, yeah. All right. With that, before we get talking about the Tigers, what's going on there, Greg, let's get to question 2 of the Pearl Drops question of the week.
This player was born in 1953. He played exclusively for the Lions. He played 11 years. He was on the defensive side of the ball, as I said. Mm-hmm. He made 4 Pro Bowls, as I said. He went to Texas and was from Texas, the state of Texas. He was he was in the front 7. I'll say that he was not a secondary guy. He was in the front 7, and I will also tell you that this could be the tipping point. I guess I'll say it anyway. He took a year off at one point.
I know I can't remember his name. I remember he was a defensive lineman, if I remember right.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it was a tackle.
Mm-hmm.
Dave something, I think.
No. But it starts with but it does start with a D.
D, yeah. It's God damn it! I know who we're talking about. You know what I know.
I know you know who we're talking about,
but I can't remember the name. Because a couple of names came to mind, but when he threw Texas, that's clicked it. I can't remember the name though. I know it starts with a D, and I know he played tackle, and he was a really good player.
He was.
He was part of. If you remember, he was part of the Silver Rush.
He was.
Right.
He was.
So maybe it'll come to me in question 3, but I know who it is. I can't remember the name. This is killing me.
Okay.
All right. With that, let's move on to. Let's move on to a team that's really bad, but at least they're getting interesting, and that would be the Detroit Tigers. As I've stated in the show notes, the Tigers still suck, but at least they are sucking by phasing in prospects while doing so. They may be 50 games under 500 right now, which I believe that's what they fell to today after they lost another series. They lost a series with Minnesota this weekend. They were officially eliminated from the postseason, I believe, yesterday. The Orioles beat them to the punch by 1 day, I believe. The first 2 teams eliminated. But at the very least, Greg, they are still losing, but they're doing so with some younger players. They're starting to bring up some of these prospects we were railing about on the last podcast. If you're going to lose, at least lose interesting. And interesting at this point is guys we've been hearing about who have been percolating the minors for a while. stop playing the Jordy Mercers of the world and start bringing up the Willie Castros, and that's exactly what they started doing. Jake Rogers has come up. It's getting the majority of the reps behind the plate right now. Willie Castro, who's maybe the Tigers' best hitting prospect in the high minors, because he was playing at AAA this year.
Right.
He got the call. Is going to play. Looks like he's going to play every day at shortstop. Travis Demeret, who was part of the trade of Atlanta, he's been the starting right fielder ever since they got him, and he's actually been playing pretty darn well with OPS in the mid-800s. Victor Reyes is playing pretty much every day at left field or center field, specifically now that Jacoby Jones is out for the year with, I believe, that broken bone in his wrist. Doyle Lugo has been a fixture in the infield now. Harold Castro is playing pretty much every damn position on the field. And I'm not saying all these guys are good. I mean, they've been successful, or there's been successes and failures. They're playing, like Lugo and Castro are not part of the future, but they are far more interesting to watch play, possibly develop what they've had out there. But, seeing guys like Rogers and Castro, who could be with this team when this team is good again, it's time. At least we're finally starting to see it. And it's also interesting that the team is playing a little tough love, Greg, in that Jamer Candelario, Christian Stewart, Grayson Greiner, all have been recently been optioned back to AAA Toledo. Stewart and Greiner, after finishing injury rehab, did not get called up to the big club. They just said, you're staying in Toledo because you guys got things to work on. Such as Stewart is the worst outfielder I've seen since the days of... God damn, how come I can't remember that left fielder's name? The Tigers playoff teams. You know what I'm talking about.
Oh, the recent playoff teams?
Yeah. Remember they got him from played with Baltimore, and you know what I'm talking about.
From what era, though? I mean, what are you talking? The Jim Leland era?
Yeah.
From Baltimore.
Yeah, well, you remember the guy who got suspended for throwing his bat at an umpire in the minors. And,
Delman Young?
Delman Young, yes, that's who I could not remember his name. Christian Stewart's defense is an equivalent to Delman Young's right now. So they said, you're going to stay down in the minor leagues. They'll bring him up when Washington's expanded in the first. But to their credit, they're saying you're not playing. Your defense is not good enough to stay in the big leagues, and let alone his hitting hasn't been either. Same with Candelario. It's his hitting. He's been he's a top shelf defensive third baseman. Can't hit to save his life. And Greiner really can't do anything behind the plate right now. I think his OPS was around 500. So at the very least, they said, let's shake it up. And they're starting to shake things up. And hopefully they'll get shaken up more, Greg, when September 1st comes around next week. And hopefully we'll see more guys who's maybe part of the Tigers' future, be it more some of the pitchers, be it some of the position guys. There's going to be more guys up, and we're going to see less and less of the of the Mercers and the Quinns and that ilk. And let's see the young guys, and if we're going to lose, be interesting. At least now they're starting to be interesting.
Well, again, yeah. I mean, we talked about this. And look, if you want to inject a little bit of excitement into this season, then bring these kids up. Obviously, Jake Rogers is struggling. We all know that. I mean, I'm not saying they're not going to come up here and they're not going to look like. Yeah,
some of these guys have not played very well, but still.
But it doesn't matter. It does not matter. These at bats, these innings that they get in between now and the end of the year, they should have no bearing on their status as prospects or as far as the commitment the Tigers have to them as being part of the future. It should be absolutely meaningless. Now, it doesn't mean that that there aren't going to be things that they're going to have to work on, but it just means that they're getting their first taste of big league baseball, and it's a lot different than it is in the minors. And so, do you really expect anybody to come up here and just tear the cover off the ball? No. Do you expect anybody to come up here and turn into Sandy Koufax on the mound? No. But you do want to get them exposed to life is and also what it does to Al is it just shows them and the fans that you are part of, that these players are part of the future, and these guys are being brought up because it doesn't make sense to give playing time to Mercer and to Beckham and to guys of that nature. It doesn't make any sense to give those guys playing time right now. It makes all the sense in the world to give playing time to the Castros of the world and the Rodgerses of the world. Sink or swim, who cares? Yeah. It's not about wins alone. Who cares? It's not like you're trying to, the wins and losses means nothing. This is almost like an extended spring training kind of. Just hit them, put them in these games, see how they do. Give the big league coaches a chance to work with them while a big league season is going on, and get them exposed to some of the other players that they may be facing next year. Give them a chance to see pitchers that they're going to see next year. Get the pitchers a chance to see some of the hitters they're going to see next year. It makes all the sense in the world. Now, again, you don't go crazy. You don't bring guys up when it's way too soon. I understand that. Mm-hmm. But there comes a point, and I'm glad that they are finally, the Castro thing, as you know, came about because Nico Goodrum got hurt, and so they were going to bring Castro up as part of the roster expansion in September, but they felt like, well, why not do it now? Here's an opportunity. And Mercer, it was very professional about it. He said, I knew this day was going to come. I signed here. I knew that I was just going to be a stopgap guy, that they had a lot of kids coming up. This is a rebuilding team. I get it. He had the same situation that happened to him last year in Pittsburgh, so he's been there, done that. So, it's important to at least get a glimpse of what these kids can do. Every team, I'm glad they're not going hard line on this whole team control thing. When does the clock start and all that other junk? I'm glad they're just kind of casting that aside and saying, well, it's time now. And, they're going to struggle. Jake Rogers is, and I don't buy this notion of, well, it's going to kill the kid's confidence. He's never going to be any good again. We talked about that as well. You said, if a kid's that fragile, that he's not a big leaguer, and I agree with you. So this is going to be glad to see them doing this. Yeah,
it's. For a second I thought I was muted, but it's. It's time. It's season. The games are meaningless. The fans need something to give them a little bit of hope over the winter. And seeing some of these young guys play, like Willie Castro gets called up, first game, 2 hits, had another hit today. We'll see what his defense is like. Because he was very rough defensively at AAA Toledo, but the guy's got a big league bat. And it's probably the opposite with someone like Jake Rogers, who's it was a big league catcher defensively. We'll see if he can hit enough to stay in the big leagues or be more than just a backup. So, but at least it's made the games a little more interesting to see guys who are for most of the season. I'll put it this way: for most of the season, we've seen used to be's, never gonna be's, and wannabes. Now we're actually got a chance to see might be's.
Right.
And that gives me a little more hope for the future than I felt 6 weeks ago. When this team was just looking absolutely brutal and absolutely hopeless, and you had to wonder, was there any help going to come with this team? Well, maybe there is now, because we're starting to see at least a little trickle of the youth. Obviously, probably another year before we start seeing the pitching show up. But at the very least, it's time for some of the, and some of these guys aren't that young. Rogers, I think, is 25 years old. By the time he's out of team control, he's going to be in his early 30s anyway. As a catcher, he's already out of his prime. So it's time to get these guys, bring them up, get their feet wet, and let's go from there. It's you can how we used to bitch about the Red Wings keeping prospects percolating for almost forever. That's counterintuitive. It's counterproductive, I should say.
Right.
Once these guys get to a certain point, bring them up. Let's see what they got. Go from there and start separating the wheat from the chaff. At least they're starting that process. Thank God they're starting the process. All right. The other big story of the week when it comes to the Tigers, Greg, it's tangentially involved the Tigers, because the Tigers, I guess the only reason it involves the Tigers is because it involves an ex-Tiger and a beat writer. The only reason the beat writer was there because he covers the Tigers, and that would be the Justin Verlander versus Anthony Fennick in the Detroit Free Press incident that happened this week. And apparently, well, it's been kind of known that Verlanders have been feuding with Fenech for a few years now. And that feud reached a head in Houston when the Tigers were down there playing. And this is, I think what was worse about this is this was all abetted, if not encouraged, by the Astros front office. And that Fenech was forcibly kept out of Houston's locker room after Verlander lost his start against the Tigers. That was a bizarre start it was, where he gives up 2 hits, pretty much had no-hit stuff, but gives up 2 home runs and loses 2-1. But regardless of all that, Verlander, who has a bit of a reputation of a red ass, he's not been afraid to be vocal about things, and kind of be like he has some Jack Morris in him. I'll put it that way. And he did not want to talk to Fenech, I guess because of things that went down. The Free Press wrote a whole story about this, about why Verlander has a vendetta against him. But by doing this, by the Astros not allowing Fenech to do his job and go into the locker room, that violated Major League Baseball's collective bargaining agreement, as league rules require reporters must have equal access to both teams and all players. An Astros press release defended their actions. That was one of the more clueless things I've ever read. Say, well, we did that to keep there from being a confrontation. There's ways to handle that, not but other than keeping the guy out. And obviously, this raised the ire of the Free Press and essentially most of the members of the BBWAA, who I've had issues with, but they are completely in the right here. Major League Baseball has since contacted the Astros and said, don't do that again. And the BBWA has condemned the actions, and the Free Press is going to file a formal complaint with Major League Baseball. And there is a lot wrong here, Greg. One, Verlander's completely in the wrong. He's essentially asking his front office to be complicit in breaking league rules, for one thing. Another thing, if he doesn't want to talk to Fenech, don't answer his questions.
Right.
Or if he comes up to him, say, I'm not talking to you and this is why, so he can get it out in the open rather than this. Because it's Verlander the next day sent a tweet, I didn't want to talk to him because of, what was the term he used?
Ethical?
Unethical. Because he's unethical, but didn't say why he was unethical.
Right.
And so the whole thing was bizarre. Man, if you don't want to talk to the guy, man up and say, I'm not going to talk to you, rather than have the damn organization essentially act as a bulldozer, just plow all these, plow everything out of your way so you don't have to deal with it. I think that is, man up, tell them what you think and be done with it. And the other thing that got me about this, Greg, is that many fans sided with Verlander in this. Essentially, and Verlander has a history of not getting along with the media. That's no big secret. But fans sided with him for the reasons of, why hear Fenech's the douchebag, so he had it coming. Or the media makes up shit, so he's part of the fake media, so Verlander can do what he wants. And that is so goddamn clueless that people are buying into this fake media narrative. It just pisses me off. Because these beat writers have probably the hardest job in media, especially sports media for sure. And the shit they got to put up with, and then to be called out like this, I'm not a huge fan of Fenech. He's got a history. He's done some dumb things himself.
Right.
But he's completely in the right here. Verlander was completely in the wrong. The Astros were completely in the wrong. And the other thing I think that bothered me which may have say something more about Fenech than anything else, is that the other beat writers in town didn't really do anything about it. Didn't stand up, didn't say a thing. Well, could you see someone like Joe Falls or Jerry Green standing by for that?
Not.
Yeah,
no,
exactly.
It's Detroit, and it's a different dynamic now, and the kind of journalism you're talking about is long.
Oh, could you picture Al Ackerman going off on this?
No.
Bob Page, for that matter. Yeah.
You know what? You hit the nail on the head and everything. I agree with everything you said. Essentially, I mean, you're right about Verlander. You're right about the Astros. I mentioned Verlander. The only issue I would have with what you said is you said that Verlander has a history of being cross with the media. I don't share that view. I don't recall him really ever being cross with the media. I think he's been very gregarious. He's always been the one who they talk to in the dugout when they do a live interview during a game. He's always been very, as far as I know, very accommodating. We say what you will about Fenech. That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who it was. That's irrelevant.
Yeah, right.
The bottom line is that it was wrong on all sides. Are you saying that? Am I hearing you correctly that Major League Baseball is not going to come down on the Astros on this?
I think it hasn't all been decided yet. But from reading the Free Press article, Major League Baseball just told the Astros they were a bad boy and do it again when there should be a major fine involved, if you ask me, and some sort of comeuppance. If I was the BBWAA, I'd be racing holy hell about this. I can't believe they aren't doing more.
Well, right. If all they're going to do has been done, then you're right. Then it's not enough.
And we don't know that for sure.
Right. Don't know that for sure, but it's not enough if that's the case. It's too bad because I think Verlander is bigger than this. I'm surprised he would. I know he's got his side of the story. I understand it, but the Astros. To me, it's a tail wagging the dog kind of thing here. The Astros have said, Justin, we appreciate your concern, but we have to let Ben again. You don't have to talk to him. Yeah. It was just a bad look. They had the photograph of the three guards stationed outside the. Like they're bodyguards at bouncers at a bar. I mean, it just didn't look good. On top of it all, it looked kind of stupid, frankly.
Yeah.
He probably would. People say, "Well, Verlander was upset because he lost the game." I don't know if it was that. I think he probably would have. He probably would have.
No, this had to been planned ahead of time anyway.
Even if he had won the game, he probably would have said the same thing. I don't want to. So the Astros kowtowed to one of their star players, and
it's a slippery slope. Because
what are they afraid of, though? What are they afraid of with Verlander? What are they afraid of? Had they said, "Look, can't do that. It's against the rules," which he should know, by the way, and say, we don't have to talk to the guy. It wasn't even a one-on-one. It was just a post game,
as they call it, the gangbang, so to speak.
Where you're talking to a number of media at the same time. You don't have to acknowledge them. If you want to. Get snippy with him if he wants to ask you a question in that scrum, and you want to either not recognize him or tell him right then in front of all his colleagues that I'm not going to talk to you. That's fine, but at least you've let him in, and to not let him in at all, and then post these guards stationed outside. It just was.
Well, I'll say this: if the Astros were so afraid that there was going to be a physical confrontation, that Verlander was going to beat up Fenech or something, I think it says more about Verlander, his attitude, and that he's the one that has the issues, and that the Astros should deal with it that way. Because stuff like this happened back today. Who was it that had had the water bucket dumped over their head in the Tigers locker room one year?
Oh, that was
that
by Denny McClain, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was, I want to say it was either Jim Hawkins.
It was Hawkins. I think you're right. It was like Jim Hawkins. Yeah. And the 80s Tigers were, they've even admitted that they were assholes to the media and other people. So this shit happens. And, but the problem is that, if you don't have enough self-control to keep from it, what it sounds like, from what the Astros made it sound like, is that Verlander was so unhappy with this guy, he was going to beat him up. Because, as they put a confrontation, well, I think they got bigger issues than Anthony Fenech, if you ask me.
Right.
But all you had to do, like you said, you just say, don't answer his questions, don't deal with them, or, he didn't even have to talk to the media. He could have left before they came in, or there was so many different ways to handle this, and the Astros and Verlander picked the absolute worst way to handle it, which I just find really hilarious.
Right.
And I don't know. I think what really bothered me the most is that I know it's what fans do, but they almost all took Verlander's side. Hearing that, well, he can talk to whoever he wants. there's free. No, it's a free country. He can speak to whoever he wants. That's free. No, this has
we don't know the rules. Yeah, we don't know the rules.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with free speech. It has nothing to do with free will and all this crap. This is contractually obligated stuff that was negotiated between the union and the owners. And Verlander just didn't live up to his part of the bargain. And as I said, it's a slippery slope. What happens if say Clayton Kershaw doesn't want to talk to somebody, or Miguel Cabrera, who would have numerous reasons not to talk to people, doesn't want to start talking to the media, and they start holding people out, things like that. I mean, I just hate this narrative out there that the media is evil when we're going to start getting political, and I don't want to do that. So I'll just say that people who buy into the fake media narrative, especially with we're talking about the damn sports section of the Free Press, they're idiots. I'll just say that. They don't make shit up. And if they do, they should be punished. And usually it gets called out, as we've seen what happened with Mitch Albom, we've seen it happen with Drew Sharp. If you ask me, they should have been fired, but they were punished. But anybody who buys into the ridiculous fake media crap, I don't even want to talk about them.
Exactly.
And you used to be part of the media.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've dealt with athletes on a one-to-one basis. I've had dealings with the media and teams, and the whole thing was a screw-up from the get-go. And really, it made me think less of Justin Verlander and the Houston Astros, because I think the Astros, organizationally, are a model franchise right now. But this was just a screw-up all the way around. All right, Greg, how about we get question 3 out of the way and we start hitting the home stretch?
Well, let's. I guess this is the gimme. So no pearl drops no longer an issue. Texas defensive lineman, 4 Pro Bowls, part of the Silver Rush, retired for 1 year to go into the oil business.
Yep.
And then came back. And first name starts with a D. Last name starts with an E.
Yeah, I know now. I know.
Okay.
You need to go further.
Okay.
Doug English.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
It was on the tip of my tongue, and I could not remember. He was really a damn good interior.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was.
Kind of before his time in that way.
Yeah, no, he was. He was very, very good, and that
was a good defensive line too. Bubba.
You had Baker.
Bubba Baker, Doug English, William Gay.
Purefoy and
Doug Purefoy, yep.
A lot of good players in that line, and Doug English 66 today, and so happy birthday, Doug English.
All right, and very underrated Lion. And honestly, you want to talk about someone who probably does belong on the Lions Ring of Honor? I think you make a good case for Doug English.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right.
A career Lion who had some huge seasons.
Yeah, he had 13 sacks in 1983. With 13 sacks,
crazy for a
defensive interior lineman.
Yeah,
and he had 2 safeties that year.
And his career started before they started even tracking sacks. So
right,
yeah,
that's right.
So yeah, it's God damn it! I was hoping for the pearl drops, but at least we got to talk about Doug English a little. So it evens out. So all right, before we wrap up the show, there was some other news that broke this afternoon before we recorded, and I guess it involves Andre Drummond and the Pistons. And I guess this happened yesterday, and it kind of hit Twitter this afternoon because there's video of it. But Andre Drummond, Greg, all but confirmed he will decline his player option on his contract. He's got a 2-year contract left. He's got 2 years left on his contract, I should say. The second year is a player option. So essentially, this turns this year into his contract year because he's going to decline the player option and explore free agency in 2020, at the end of the 2020 season. Well, this coming season. And if he's his final year of the contract, which for a long time people said, how could he turn down a $28 million option? Well, it's looking like that's what's going to happen. Because if he goes into free agency, it's an extremely weak 2020 free agent class. Nothing doesn't compare to what we saw this last year. And he would likely be the top name in free agency if he became a free agent. And there's always teams that have cap money to spend. And you got to remember, he'll only be, 25, 26 when he enters free agency, so he'll still be a young player. And he'll be able to get that, probably a 5-year deal, probably hoping for at least $30 million a year. So, from all accounts, Greg, he's going to walk. So, what do you do if you're the Pistons? Is he worth inking to a max contract extension? We're talking, maybe a little bit more than he's making now, maybe because a true max deal I think is $35 million for him. So we're talking anywhere between $28 to $35 million a year, probably for 4 or 5 years. And he's still a relatively young player. He'll only be 26 at this point. So do you do that? You sign that contract extension, or do you sign him when he hits free agency? Or do you trade him if you think he's not going to be worth that kind of money? And if you then trade him, well, hell, you might as well trade Blake Griffin too, because essentially you've been building around those two hoping to make the playoffs. And so then you decide, well, if we're not going to keep him, we might as well start a full rebuild. Or do you play the season out, let him walk, then you have $30 million of cap space to spend in what's supposed to be a crappy year of free agency. The Pistons this all of a sudden kind of moves up. I think the Pistons were thinking they had another year to figure this out. Well, I think Drummond just moved up the timetable, and now they got some shit they got to figure out for the next 6 months.
I think this could actually be something. This could be a really good thing. I think this could be what kind of forces the Pistons' hand to finally do what they probably should have done for 2 or 3 years ago, which is completely dismantle the team and start. Now, of course, now you've lost years, but you can't change the past. I wouldn't hitch my train to.
And that's the answer I expected from you.
I would not hitch my train to Drummond at that cost. That's not to say that if he were to go somewhere else, that he wouldn't blossom and he wouldn't become somebody who would maybe help a team to the promised land. But I can only go by what I've seen, and I still have a sour taste in my mouth from his performance.
The playoffs
last year against Milwaukee. I just thought he was Now the only thing you can hope is that that he finds some sort of inner self and really has a monster. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that he's not performed. He has.
Well, how about he has a whole season like he played for about 6-8 weeks in the second half of the season last year.
Right. If he's sniffing that big contract, and that's the one thing you can hope for, is that he's sniffing those big bucks, then I don't know of any. If that's not going to be the incentive to really have him up his game, then I don't know what is. Now, I don't agree that he's been a bust here. He's not been a bust, but
he was a ninth-round draft. He was a ninth overall pick. The Pistons actually nailed the pick.
He hasn't been awful.
No,
but there's just something.
There's something
missing about this guy. There's something missing. Right, and I don't know if it's. And again, this is what. And I so many times, Al, we talk about things that we've talked about before, but it's hard not to. And in this case, it's about what we were mentioning when it comes to players coming into the NBA when they're so young. Drummond was 19 when he joined the NBA, and it just there's just something to be said for just staying in the college game a little while longer. That there's a maturity factor. There's basketball skills that still need to be honed. I don't know. I know that's a whole other discussion. Yeah. But I think you mentioned that he leaves you wanting more, and then I'm thinking to myself, well, are our expectations
too much
for this guy? Right? Are our expectations for this kid too much? I don't think so. I think that there's more there, and the reason I say that is there's just been some instances where he just has not, risen to the occasion. And I'm telling you, if he had played, in those, and I understand it was a cameo appearance in the playoffs once again, but if he had played, and they still would have lost the series, but if he would have played better or showed that he was more into it, then maybe I'd be having a different opinion right now. But I don't see. I just think that this is an opportunity now for the Pistons, albeit it may set them back a little bit again. But I think this is an opportunity for them to maybe think about, dismantling or just kind of gutting this thing and starting, just having a boatload of money.
Yeah.
And just, maybe suffer through a couple of 20-win seasons and then just kind of try to make yourself, because right now they've been trying out for the last several years, it seems like, to toe that line between I don't want to rebuild and I don't want to, I'm tethered to these bad contracts. I can't, there's a lot of things I can't do. When I say I'm talking in terms of the Pistons. There's a lot of things we can't do because we're financially hamstrung. This might finally be the opportunity they may have to just face the music and say, you know what, we'll see in a couple of years. I know it's been a long time already, but what they're doing right now, trying to be, a player in the East, in the middle of the road, fifth to sixth, seventh seed in the playoffs, and not really having a chance to even win a first round series, let alone go to the finals. It's not. I don't know. I don't know what that's doing for them. I really don't. And so this might be the first domino that topples in terms of their makeover.
Yeah. Yeah, this, as you said, this could very well finally force their hand to do something, rather than tread water like they've done for the last decade.
Right.
Yeah, because when it comes down to it, okay, you give them a max contract, and when I think max contract player, I think someone more like Blake Griffin, who is literally a number one option. You run your offense around Blake Griffin, and say what Drummond is very good at a few things, specifically rebound. He's the best rebounder in the league, in a league that doesn't value rebounding the way it used to. But you're giving a max contract essentially to a role player, an elite role player, but still a role player, a complementary piece. And I have a hard time giving that kind of money to a guy who will never be your number one option unless, like I said, he blossoms this year, which it's entirely possible. But he's elite at what he does. What he does do well, he's elite at. But what he doesn't do well can affect your team negatively. Like when it comes to things like rim protection, or helping weak side defense. So. This is what, if I'm the Pistons, they really going to have to make a decision on this. Either do we pay him the money or do we just start all over? Because I think the let him walk and try and find another free agent, that's not happening. No, that would be, and they would end up in the Ben Gordon, Charlie Villanueva type free agency. You don't want to do that.
Please don't even go.
Yes. So
I'm going to get PTSD.
So, and I think he's probably looking for monster money. I can't see giving him monster money considering what it means for the Pistons, So, which essentially giving monster money to a guy who has him at 500.
You know what, Al?
So I think that the moving on is probably the best thing. You
know what? I just, as you were talking, I was reading some of the comments, and I know that you can't just go by comments on articles on the internet, but every comment I read just about on the news story about this Drummond thing is bye,
yeah.
See ya. So he's far from beloved in this town. But believe me, he's way down. If you list all the favorite athletes in Detroit, and granted, this is not a very good time to have.
Right.
Detroit sports is down right now, but he's not in the top 5. There's no way. So there is not going to be. I don't think there's going to be a lot of. I think the fans would be more than okay because they've been wanting. Frankly, I think the Pistons, even though they were injected with some excitement with the Blake Griffin.
Yeah.
I think they would be at this point. I think they would be welcome to a not giving Drummond the money, and B, having that be the first domino in a massive shedding of contracts in town. I really believe that they would have no problem with that at all, and I don't think there would be any hue and cry to we need Andre Drummond. Don't you dare think about,
because then it would feel like there's a plan if they do something like that.
And the opposite, Al. I'm glad you said that, because if they do the opposite of what we're suggesting, which is to indeed sign him to that extension, it would not feel like a plan.
Right.
It would just feel like an extension of what we've already seen, which hasn't been much of a plan. So I think sometimes part of a plan has to be these kinds of decisions. And I think if you, in this particular case, given all the circumstances, I think to sign him, to hitch your train to him for 4 or 5 years at that kind of dough would not feel like much of a plan. Yeah. That would just all that would do would feel like an extension of this treading water thing that you were talking about. And I know that, again, I'm not suggesting that he wouldn't go somewhere else and even win a title.
Yeah.
But it's not about that. It's not. You can't make your decisions afraid of what he might do with another team. You have to make decisions based on what you feel is best for your team. And I think in this case, with the timing of it, I don't see it being. Let's put it this way: I don't see it being a decision that the Pistons would end up regretting. Let's put it that way. I don't think they would look back on that decision 3 or 4 years from now and say, "Gosh, we should have signed Drummond. We should have locked him up." I don't think they'd say that.
Yeah, the only wild card in all this is Tom Gores. Obviously, if he says, "I want to keep him,"
father-son relationship and all that baloney, I don't know.
Yeah, but when it comes to centers, we've been blessed in this town. Bob Lanier, Bill Laimbeer, Ben Wallace. And now we've had Andre Drummond. But the first three were physical. They were physical. They could, in Laimbeer's case, he was ahead of his time in that he was a center who could shoot the three.
Right.
Bob Lanier was maybe one of the best all-around centers of his time in rebounding and scoring and defense.
And passing, too.
And passing. And obviously, Laimbeer, he just was a team leader. Part of the attitude of that team was set by him. And obviously, Ben Wallace may be one of the best defensive players of all time. You could have made a case that he could have been a league MVP based on his defense alone. That's how good he was defensively and as a rebounder. And now we have Andre Drummond in a town that loves big men. And you have a fan base saying, well, if you're going to go with free agency, have fun. And I think that says volumes, as you said, about what this town thinks of Andre Drummond, and that that this is a fan base that's ready for a change in direction. Because I think you nailed it. Was that if they sign Drummond, it's just more of the same, and then they have to, and then they're a 38 to 42 win team, 7th, 8th seed in the playoffs if they make the playoffs, and then where are we 5 years from now? When it's a tread. It's that damn treadmill. I think we're if they decide to keep Drummond, if he doesn't have that huge breakout season this year, it'll just be another 4 or 5 years or more of the same, and then we'll be having the same damn conversation 5 years from now. We don't want that, do we? So
no,
but that's it'll be interesting to see how the season plays out now, especially when the trade deadline goes around, because if they don't think they're going to keep him, they're going to have to trade him. And if they trade him, then they got to trade Blake Griffin. So no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And then we have another team in town tanking. And wouldn't that be great? So, but at least, as you said, there's a plan. There'd be a plan. So, all right. With that, let's wrap this show up as it's time. We've covered up. We've circled third, Greg. We're headed into home. So I want you to come in sliding head first with your jerk of the week.
It's Major League Baseball. These Players' weekend uniforms that I've seen this weekend they look like the teams look like they're playing in their pajamas. I don't know. I'm okay with the goofy nicknames in the back. I'm okay with that. That's fine. That doesn't bother me. But visually, I know it's called the Players' Weekend for a reason because it's their chance to. And I don't know if the players, if we're behind these designs or not, these uniform designs, but they just,
From what I know
it's just
the players hate them. So
I know it's just a weekend. And I probably shouldn't get caught up in what they wear for a weekend, but they just look awful. I don't know who came up with this. This whole, what it is, Al? It's the whole. I'm down on the whole alternate uniform thing in every sport. I don't like alternate uniforms in any sport. I think they look hideous. I think they look ridiculous. I don't like. I just don't like them. I'm an old school guy. I understand that, and I definitely am when it comes to uniforms. I just think uniforms back in the day look so much better than they look now. And these alternate uniforms, whether you're talking football, basketball, hockey, or baseball, are just hideous. They're just hideous. So my jerk of the week is Major League Baseball for these ridiculous uniforms.
Yeah, well, I kind of went in a few different directions. I thought about giving it one to ESPN for making Desmond Howard apologize for his for riffing on the Chappelle Show, Wayne Brady, "Do I have to choke a bitch?" joke that he said during College game day over, I think the discussion was, is Michigan ever going to beat Ohio State? But the Andrew Luck thing changed that because, I had mentioned earlier that the hot take artists came out. Well, I think I found the worst hot take, and it was actually, I found it on Deadspin because Drew Magry wrote a great article about the fallout. Much of what we discussed was a very similar article about what's happening in the NFL. And he posted Dan Dakich, who is the college basketball color man for ESPN, and Big Ten fans hate him. And his tweet was, "I have family working in steel mills, cops, teachers making far less than Luck, and this guy is tired? My backside." No, this is the tweet from Dakich. And then, if you know his history, because he's saying, essentially saying that Andrew Luck isn't tough enough to stick it out. Well, if you know his history, he was a head basketball coach, I believe, at Bowling Green.
Yeah.
He took the job at West Virginia, then saw what he had to work with, and quit and went back to Bowling Green because you know why? He thought the job was going to be too tough. We see this all the time coming from certain media members. They come up with these hot takes, and completely, ignoring their own histories or not seeing nuances in stories. Everything's got to be black and white, yes, no, hot take, this side or that side, and there's so many other ways to look at this. But to see it come from someone as, I would say, as annoying and obnoxious as Dan Dakich, completely forgetting his own checkered past about not being tough enough.
Right.
That's my jerk of the week for, again, calling out it. No one knows what's going through Luck's mind, and the last person I want to hear about talking about what he thinks is going through Luck's mind is a guy like Dan Dakich or any of the others, Skips and all them assholes of the world. You know who exactly who I'm talking about. Yeah, so that's my jerk of the week.
I agree. I totally agree. Good call on that one. I hadn't seen Dakich's
and he started to backpedal a little bit. He called, I was misconstrued. Bullshit. You just got called out on it and you started backpedaling. Right. And that's another thing you see all the time on Twitter specifically. So, oh my God, did we rant or rave on that podcast or what? All right, Greg, let's wrap things up. So why don't you get out the thank yous, anything else we may have coming up on the podcast?
Yes, absolutely. Again, follow me on Twitter at Greg Gamer. Read my WordPress blog, Out of Bounds. My hockey blog is The Winged Wheeler, also hosted by WordPress. And I want to, as usual, thank my lovely wife Sharon for putting up with this stuff. And thank you, Big Al, for making Sunday night so gosh darn fun. Oh, yeah.
And one thing I wanted to bring up and almost forgot about, but a friend of the show, Mick McCabe, the son of Swami, I'm going to I'll link this in the show notes. He wrote a scathing article in the Free Press today about essentially calling out the current culture in high school sports of actually, we should talk about this, I think, in the next podcast. That he called out parents and this whole industry around high school athletes, making them single sport athletes and trying to make every single one of them, world class athletes are going to get college scholarships. And he is someone who has seen high school sports start from when I played in the 70s, when you just played and you moved on to the next sport, you played that sport, then you played the next one, and that was that. And it's to what we see today, which is essentially an industry around recruiting and trainers and AAU and all that. It's really a worthwhile article, and I think we'll talk about it in the next podcast. But I wanted to link to it in this one and bring it up because it really struck a chord with me, because we've had Mick on the show before. So it's definitely worth a read. So I just wanted to point that out. All right, with that, if you want to hear the show, if you want, or you want to tell someone else to download the show, find us. We're on the usual suspects. Of course, we're on iTunes. We are also on Stitcher Radio, which is Stitcher.com on your computer browser. It's Stitcher on iOS in the App Store, and obviously Google Play, where you. It's a great podcatcher. I listen to most of my podcasts on that app. As always, on either one, just search The Knee Jerks, and Big Al. The Knee Jerks should probably be enough. We're also on the YouTube, where all the kids are, So, again, search for us on YouTube so you can see our ugly mugs rant and rave for 90 minutes or so. Again, search The Knee Jerks. There will be links to all these in the show notes. Essentially, we are available on any major podcast platform. Just search The Knee Jerks and you can find us. If you want to go straight to the source and download it directly, go to thekneejerks.net. That'll take you to our website, our blog. What do you mean blog? We're not bloggers. Our podcast page, where you can directly download it or find the RSS feed if you're really old school like that. And, of course, I want to give a shout-out to Linda, who is working tonight, saving lives in the air. So thank you and love you and all that. To give a shout-out to Greg for putting up with me and another technical snafu we had tonight with my hitting the wrong button at the wrong time, because I'm ranting and raving. My hands are waving and everything tonight. So, and, of course, a shout-out to the listeners for listening to us in our 10th year of talking sports. I can't believe it. Still can't believe it. All right. With that out of the way, Greg, I think in our next show, you know what we'll have to talk about? Lions. Opening day.
We will.
Yes. So we'll have actual real football to talk about. Hell, Michigan and Michigan State will have played. I think they'll actually, by that point, they'll play 2 games. So we'll have lots of football to talk about. And at that point, also, we'll have more Tigers prospect talk, as it'll be after September 1st. So we'll have more of that to talk about. So it'll be we're hitting a hot time of sports, Greg. So everybody buckle up and put on a helmet. It's going to get exciting. So until that time, this is Al Beaton saying good evening, good luck, and aloha.
Ciao, everybody. We'll see you in 2 weeks.